Hang on a second. Hello, Packers fans. Welcome into PackersNews.com Facebook Live. I am Kassidy Hill, joined by Ryan Wood. We wanted to give everybody a day or two to sort of like get their blood pressure back down before we hopped on and did this. But we know that there are probably lots of questions, concerns, needs to vent after the Packers' early exit from the playoffs after losing 13-10 to the San Francisco 49ers on Saturday night in the NFC divisional round. So we're going to start off with a little bit about what Matt LaFleur had to say on Monday. In the meantime, go ahead and get your questions in the comments. We're going to be getting to those here soon. And so, Ryan, like I said, though, I just kind of want to start with what all Matt LaFleur had to say. He talked to us for 45 minutes on Monday. I think that's longer than if you would combine the 3 previous times. And really fell on the sword for everything that went wrong on Saturday versus the 49ers. Took a lot of the blame. So let's just start with that. How much of that blame goes to Matt LaFleur? And are these fixable issues, or is this their ceiling right now?
It was such a bad loss. It's the worst loss since 5 minutes ago to the Super Bowl in Seattle. And one of the worst losses of the decade. But really, the Giants game in 11 comes to mind. There's very few. They've had a lot of losses. Very few that have been this bad. The point being, there's a lot of blame to go around. Like you just scatter the blame like ashes. Yeah, Matt LaFleur, sure, he has a lot of blame. There's no question about that. He's got 39 wins in the regular season, and his teams haven't shown up consistently in the playoffs as favorites. And losing at home, you cannot lose home playoff games. Aaron Rodgers, a lot of blame there. He's a guy that, if you're the MVP of the league, find the end zone. That's what you're supposed to. You got to find the end zone. Wasn't able to do it. Obviously, we all know about the special teams. So, yeah, no, I think that there's no shortage of blame to go around, especially in this particular loss. You're on mute, Kassidy.
Sorry.
Wow. Technology's hard for me, too.
It is. As you said, only 10 points. If you're the MVP, you would expect more from that. And after that first offensive drive, Ryan, they really didn't do much at all. And is there a worry that, and I guess this is the best way to ask it, is there a worry that this could be Aaron Rodgers' ceiling as well, that he's not going to get you more than a great regular season and then struggle in the playoffs?
This is a regular season team. This is a regular season coach. Spent 39 wins, 0 for 3 now getting the Super Bowl, right? This is a regular season quarterback. He's about to win his 4th MVP. He's 7-9 since winning his lone Super Bowl. He's had ample opportunity to get back there. And when you think about his past decade, there's really one really good playoff game that stands out. That was the 2016 divisional round at Dallas. He balled out. He was out of his mind. Ended with the play to Jared Cook on that left sideline. But other than that, I mean, when has Aaron Rodgers, since that Super Bowl run, when has he been lights out throughout an entire run?
That's a very good question, yeah. So all of that to say, and I'm sure, yes, the questions are starting to come in, so let's go ahead and address them. What does the future look like for Aaron Rodgers? And Michael says it's time to move on from Aaron, start a new chapter, because even though we win games with him in the postseason, we keep getting the same outcome. So it's a bit like insanity if we keep him. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. So is that a fair argument?
That was what was in my head, too. You stole my line. You stole my cliche. Yeah, I mean, you keep doing the same thing over and over again. I mean, who likes to continue to run into a brick wall? Not me. I mean, I might do it once or twice, but by the third time, I might learn a thing or two. So, look, it's tough because you see what this guy can do for you all throughout a regular season. He plays like a wizard at quarterback. He's a magician with the football in his hands. He does things that nobody else does.
Right.
But you can also argue that he underachieves like nobody else does either. So it goes both ways, right? It cuts both ways there. You might get your wish, Michael, just from a standpoint that the cap it ain't there. I mean, I don't know how they make it work. Matt LaFleur said there's some things that they can do. He vowed that this team is not going into a rebuild. When I asked him about what Rodgers had said on Saturday night after the game, but that's wishful thinking. I'd like $1 million. That would be really nice right now. If I could have $1 million, that'd make me very happy. Doesn't mean I'm getting $1 million, right? Sometimes you get the cards that are dealt to you. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a tough call, but if they can't make it work with this team, think about this, Kassidy. All they needed to do with this team, which was a loaded, talented team, a much more talented team they're going to have in 2022, no question.
Right.
All they needed to do is beat Jimmy Garoppolo and Matthew Stafford at home, and they're in the Super Bowl.
Right.
It will never get easier than that. It won't. It's impossible. It's impossible to get easier than that. They couldn't do it.
As you said, the cap is what it is. Callum asked, if you were Brian Gutekunst, what do you do with Aaron Rodgers? Listen to him on the Pat McAfee show. Rodgers said he would probably reveal his decision on the McAfee show. It's not a huge shock. But if you're Gutekunst, what do you do with him? Do you sacrifice the cap or do you sacrifice your 4-time MVP?
Yeah, that's just what we're talking about. That's the question right there. That's a tough decision. Aaron Rodgers did give some details that are important yesterday. He said that not only would he like to have his decision not drag out past free agency, which he said will 100% not happen, but he pointed at the franchise tag window with Davante Adams as when he'll be able to make his decision on the future. There's no question Aaron Rodgers is going to want Davante Adams to come back if he comes back. Right. If he wanted Randall Cobb to come back, you better believe he's going to want Davante Adams to come back. The franchise tag window, it opens February 22nd and it closes March 8th. Just because March 8th is the deadline doesn't mean that that's the deadline to make the decision or when Aaron Rodgers might make the decision. By late February, as Aaron Rodgers referenced, he's going to have an idea. He's going to know where the Packers stand on whether or not they're going to use the franchise tag on Davante Adams, which, as Aaron Rodgers said, and he's absolutely right, Davante Adams does not want – no player wants the franchise tag. That is right. The last thing a player wants. So it wouldn't make 17 happy, but – that's where he's pointing. The other, I thought, really important thing that Aaron Rodgers said, unlike a year ago, any fissions, any fracture with the franchise is not a factor in this decision. It's not part of him deciding his future. He said that his relationship with Brian Gutekunst has grown leaps and bounds over the past season. Brian Gutekunst has opened his door to have personnel decisions. He obviously submitted to the demand of Aaron Rodgers to trade for Randall Cobb. So that he used friendship and trust as two words to describe Brian Gutekunst. So in Aaron Rodgers' words, it's going to be a simple conversation. It's not something that is going to bleed out. He doesn't want a war of silence, as he put it. So in theory, we're going to have an answer early on to this offseason, which I know you and I, Kassidy, we're okay with that. That works. That's
exactly.
A good one. I like that.
I'm good with an early answer. Mike asked, I was putting this up initially just for thoughts, but this is actually a really good question. If you're going into a rebuild or a mini rebuild, what are your thoughts about a non-exclusive tag placed on Davante, and hope you get 2 first-rounders for him and VS letting him walk in free agency? Before you go into this, Ryan, let's just a quick moment to explain. If you don't know, the franchise tag and the non-exclusive tag are not necessarily the same thing, if I remember correctly. But the franchise tag that Ryan mentioned a second ago is what was placed on Davante Adams for this past season. Am I remembering that correctly?
No, this past year was his final year of his contract.
Okay, so it was discussed
now a free agent
for this coming year. Okay.
Yes.
The franchise tag is essentially, when it was created, was a good idea, but has over the years become weaponized by clubs as a way to essentially hold players under their current deal and not let them walk when they wanted to, or not let other clubs put in a request for them.
It's anti-free agency.
Yeah, that's the best way to explain it. It's much more complex than that, but that's the best way to explain it, and it's why players don't like it. It essentially holds them hostage under a deal that they don't want with a team that they might have been looking to walk away from. So all of that to say, Mike asked, what are your thoughts about a non-exclusive tag on Davante, and hope you get 2 first-rounders?
Yeah, Mike, it's a great question. I'll be honest with you, I haven't given it a lot of thought. So I don't think that this team can afford to lose Davante Adams. However, if they're not going to have Aaron Rodgers back,
he's not going to
maybe it's time to just get a boatload of assets and rebuild. I know that's what Matt LaFleur said they're not going to do, but let's be real. If you're not going to have Aaron Rodgers, you're kind of going into a rebuild. I mean, that's what you're doing. Right. So it's kind of like having Mariano Rivera on a team that's going to win 70 games. Do you really need that elite closer if you're not going to win?
Right.
Not so much. Not if you don't have the quarterback. At that point, let Davante Adams go get his money. I would imagine that's where they go.
And you made a really good point about Davante Adams earlier this season that, it's not necessarily for him just about going where the money is. Jacksonville could pay him a ton of money and make him one of the highest paid receivers. But he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory, as you pointed out. He's going to need to go somewhere with a quarterback that can get him there.
Yeah, no question. And at that position especially, Davante Adams, I asked him about that late in the season. And he said he feels like he's a receiver that's not dependent on the quarterback. And in a lot of ways, he's as close to that being true about him as anybody. Because I've thought, look, I've said it. I know I've said it in the press box, Kassidy. I know that I've gotten flack from you. I've gotten flack from Pete. But I think Davante Adams is the best player on this team. I think he's been the best player on this team for 2 years. He's not the most important player on this team. Aaron Rodgers is the most important player on this team. He's the quarterback. And Aaron Rodgers is a mighty fine player in the regular season, especially. He's a mighty fine player. To me, Davante Adams is the best player on this team. So he's the type of guy that you can put with a lot of different quarterbacks and still get production, still get a presence on the field. But can that be a Hall of Fame presence without a good quarterback? I don't know that any receiver. I mean, that position's so dependent on who's throwing you the ball that I don't know that's got to be a factor in Davante Adams' mind.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, he can get good stats, but can he get to the next step? And he is the best receiver in football. That's something that Matt LaFleur pointed out as to why Aaron Rodgers went to him deep in double coverage as opposed to Allen Lazard when he could have converted. He said there's
still the wrong call.
Still the wrong call. Yes, it was the wrong call, but he said there's something to be said for throwing to the best receiver on football. But that's a whole other debate with the fact that he didn't throw to Allen Lazard there. Okay. Patrick says, get Darren Rizzi to coach special teams from the Saints. They've got to do something with special teams, right, Ryan?
Yeah, and I think they've wanted.
And Diane Rizzi. Says the same thing as well, completely revamped.
They've wanted Rizzi for a minute and it just hasn't happened for whatever reason. Look, this is not for a lack of trying. That's maybe the worst part of this is that Brian Gutekunst really he zeroed in and he focused on special teams this past year. You look at it, Amari Rodgers drafted in the 3rd round. They knew he wasn't going to step in and be a prominent receiver. Why they draft him? To return. That's a special teams draft pick right there. Trading, releasing J.K. Scott, a former 5th-round pick, and trading a 6th-round pick for Corey Bojorquez with the Rams, that's a massive – that's a really significant resource given to punter right before week 1. They released Hunter Bradley, who was a 7th-round pick, another asset at that position, and they signed Stephen Wordle midway through the season. All 3 of those positions, 3 of the 4 primary special teams positions, Brian Gutekunst addressed, and it got them nowhere. In fact, it got them worse. They even worse than they were the past 2 years under Sean Menenga. So, yeah, you're going to look at a new special teams coordinator. That's a foregone conclusion for 2022. And we'll see if, for all the great things Brian Gutekunst, to me, is the NFL Executive of the Year. He's done so – you know what they are. But he doesn't get a pass for not fixing special teams because special teams ended their season.
I mean, it could even be argued, and we don't want to pile on to one guy, but Wardle got passed on the blocked field goal. And I believe on the block
punt. On the block punt. It was Tyler Lancaster should have blocked inside on the block field
blocked field goal? Okay. I knew he got passed on one of them.
But, Steve, 2 things on that. Stephen Wordle, I've never seen a less resistance on an NFL field when anyone's trying to block anybody than what he had against Jordan Willis. I mean, it wasn't even putting him on a sled. It was like he was a ghost and literally invisible, and he just went right through him. But as Matt LaFleur rightly said, Stephen Wirtle cannot be put on an island against Jordan Willis.
Yeah.
That is a schematic miscue. That is something that cannot happen, and it did, and it led to for the 49ers, a miraculous block punt because they weren't getting in the end zone. They weren't getting the 7 points they needed. You get a good punt there, the game's over. So, yeah, it was personnel, it was execution, and it was schematics. It was both.
Yeah. This is actually pretty funny from Atomic Hound. He has a tradition of burning home playoff tickets after a loss. Who would you recommend I send the receipt for my new phone to? Because tickets had to be
Kassidy will handle that for you. She'll take all invoices.
Yeah, go ahead and send it right on. I'll get to that as soon as possible. Yeah, I'll get right on that.
Better you than me.
Rebecca asked, do you think Rodgers is trying to play hero ball too much in the playoffs?
I think he plays scared. I think he clams up.
Really?
He'll obviously he'll rebuke that. He won't agree. But I don't even go back to look. Let's acknowledge some things. He's been a different quarterback in the playoffs than he's been in the regular season. There is zero question about that. Over the totality of his career, his passer rating plummets in the postseason compared to where it is in the regular season. He's a soon to be four-time MVP in the regular season. He's had one good run in the playoffs. Different guy. Why is that? Well, he changes the way he plays. You look at that last throw to Davante Adams, a great example. I mean, in the regular season, he's hitting Allen Lazard for that. They're getting a chunk play off, right there, and they're off and running. Didn't see him. I don't know how Aaron Rodgers didn't see him, but he didn't see him. But the play where I say he's playing scared, the 75-yard reception to Aaron Jones, just floating it up there, trying not to miss. That's what he's trying not to miss. If he throws a pass and hits him in stride, that's the easiest touchdown of his career. Nobody was in the vicinity of Aaron Jones, but he tried not to miss. Aaron Jones has to stop his momentum, turn around, put his back toward the end zone, catch the ball, spin around again, and then get going. And by that point, he couldn't outrun everybody because they caught up.
Right.
That's the type that everyone's going to remember that block field goal. It should have never been a block field goal. That should have been a touchdown. That's an automatic. That's a layup, an open layup of a touchdown. So when I say play scared, I mean throw and not to miss. That's not what Aaron Rodgers does in the regular season. So he's been a different guy, and he was a different guy Saturday night.
Looking at some of his stats real quick. During the playoffs, he has a 64.7 completion percentage, averaging 267.9 yards per game, and a passer rating of 100. During the regular season all time, he is 65% completion percentage, so a little better, not much, but a little better. But this is all time, averaging 259 yards per game, but 104 quarterback rating.
Yeah, and his passer rating since the Super Bowl in 16 games is somewhere around the low 90s.
Yeah,
he's over 10 points lower, so it's a pretty significant difference.
I think what's also interesting, and this can't all be attributed just to him, but his regular season win record is 67, and then in the postseason it's 54. That's what matters.
And it's not all on Aaron Rodgers, don't get me wrong, but he hasn't produced the same. That's just
right.
Just a fact. He again, I go back to he had one just spectacular game in Dallas in that 2016 NFC divisional round that I've maybe never seen him play better than he did in that game. Other than that, since that Super Bowl run where he was dominant, he was the dude on the field that entire 2010 playoffs. Since then, other than that trip to Dallas in 16, he's had a couple Hail Marys. The 15 divisional round in Arizona he had a couple of miraculous plays there, but it was still one of those that he didn't put the game away. It's just been a different guy.
Yeah. And, during this regular season, there were times where I thought, I've never seen somebody play quarterback like this.
Yeah.
And then on Saturday, it just wasn't there at all.
Seen a lot of people play quarterback like this.
I've seen a lot of people play quarterback like this. Yes, exactly. As Jim said, big players play big in big games, and that hasn't been the case necessarily. Uh, Rebecca asked, can LaFleur get Rodgers to play different during the playoffs? And here's an interesting question. I'm going to add a question to Rebecca's question here. Do you think, I'm trying to figure out the best way to ask this. Do you think LaFleur and Rodgers are too close for LaFleur to have any sort of authority over him?
No, I think it's been collaborative the entire time. So I don't think that you could argue with the results in terms of they've been number one seed the past 2 years. He's been an MVP last year, likely this year. He's done a lot of good things. I don't know if their relationship has anything to do with the fact that they haven't brought it to the playoffs. I don't think it's that.
Okay. And another question sort of related to the salary cap. Paul asked, will Rodgers take a pay cut? And then tells us what he thinks of that. Do you see him possibly taking a pay cut a la Tom Brady?
That's the thing. No, I don't see that happening. But he could. Like it's in his control to, right? Mm-hmm. If you are worried about a rebuild, there is a way to alleviate, to assuage that concern. And that would be to take less than market value. Now, let's be clear. There's absolutely no reason that Aaron Rodgers needs to take anything a penny less than market value. If I was Aaron Rodgers, I absolutely would not take a penny less than market value. I would take every damn dollar I can get. That's how I would go. A lot of players go like that. Davante Adams, he's going to go like that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's called maximizing your earning potential. Every young professional should do that, right? Whether you're us or whether you're an NFL MVP. But if that is a massive concern of yours, you can do something about that. You can actually, take a little bit less and spread a little bit of cap room to the rest of the roster. He could do that. He won't, nor do I think he should, but he could do that.
Right. Scott, or wait, no, sorry, I lost it here. I keep going to Rebecca, but she's asking great questions. How important is it to keep some of our quality defensive players like Campbell and Douglas? Would that message of keeping them be good for team chemistry? Our colleague, Tom Silverstein, says, cut ties with Aaron Rodgers. Use that money to keep all your great defensive players. What do you think, Ryan?
I think there's a lot of value in that approach. Now, my question is this. Rasul Douglas was an all-pro type corner since he came from the Cardinals practice squad in the middle of October. Davante Campbell was literally an all-pro inside linebacker. The Packers' first-team all-pro inside linebacker since Ray Nitschke. You might have heard of him. So they played out of their minds at the best time that they possibly could in their career. Mm-hmm. They played out of their minds. But it was also a small sample size. It's one season. They've never been that guy before in their career. So the evaluation that Brian Gutekunst and, frankly, the rest of the NFL has to make. And someone's going to – don't get me wrong. Someone's going to pay both of those guys, whereas the Packers not. They're both in capital PAID. But the evaluation is, are they these guys permanently going forward, or did they have career years at the best time? That's so. On paper, it looks it's obvious. You have to have Davante Campbell and Rasul Douglas back, no question. And if they are who they were this season, it's an absolute no-brainer. But that's the question: will they be those guys going forward? Why did something click? Why was it that that it took a while and then boom, here they are? So there's a lot more thought that goes into that, I think, especially with those two specific players than the obvious. Well, one guy was an all-pro and the other guy played like an all-pro.
Right. And then, sorry, my mouse died. But one of the other questions below was Walter said, sooner or later, Packers are going to have to move on from Rodgers. Father Time never loses. Why not get as much draft capital and talented players as you can right now? Do you think it's time to go ahead and cut ties, or do you think he could have a late career surge?
Depends on what team they can have around him. But if there's not much of a team around him, then yeah, probably. It sure feels like this is it. That doesn't mean it's it. Matt LaFleur said very clearly that he he wants Aaron Rodgers back, and everybody in the Packers organization is on board with that. But yeah, no, we'll see. It's a long off season. It's hard to see him back at this point, but that doesn't, it was hard to see him back at times last offseason, and he ended up coming back. So we'll have to see it play out.
Do you buy into his deadline? Do you think we really will have an answer by then?
I do. I mean, if he's that emphatic about it, I think that he's going to stick to it.
Right.
I think that the fact that him and the Packers are a much better relational space than they were a year ago is also a big part of that as well. So, yeah, I think he will.
I mean, if you have a choice between Jordan Love and drafting a guy, though, which route do you think is better? That was another question in there was, do you think we get a good look at Jordan Love in 2022?
Well, let's not forget that in 2008, as Aaron Rodgers was preparing to enter his first season as starting quarterback, the Packers used a second-round pick on Brian Brom. That's what you do at that position. You continue to double down, and you throw the kitchen sink at that position until you find the guy.
Right.
And then you found the guy, you focus on everything else. But if you don't got a quarterback until you got nothing. And that, that's my one concern, or that we raised on the podcast with Spoon's argument to load up on defenses. That's all fine and dandy. Like, you can load up on defense, but if you don't got the quarterback, you're the Indianapolis Colts missing the playoffs. Because that team's got 7 Pro Bowlers and they didn't make the playoffs. Why? Because they had Carson Wentz. They didn't have a quarterback. So if you don't have a quarterback, it doesn't really matter what else you got. Your ceiling in this league is so limited. It's so low that good luck. I mean, have fun watching, 20 to 17 rock fights every week. That's what you want to do.
Here's a good question. Do you see Rodgers going to Denver? Especially if Hackett is there.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense for a reason, right? They're obviously a team that's been talked a lot about. Where there's smoke, there's fire. So, I don't know if I'm not making any predictions right now on where he's going to go, but that would be a shortlist team.
Jeremy says, if special teams didn't give up 10 points, Packers win, conversation today would be different. He didn't play MVP, but in the playoffs, you can't have one face terrible for years. It was the D. I would disagree with that, Jeremy. I thought the defense played incredible during that game, so much better than I thought they would, especially against Deebo Samuel and that offensive front. I mean, they played really, really, really well. But is there something to the argument, Ryan, that the D had not played great all season and that Aaron Rodgers had been having to win these games? And
I think what Jeremy is saying is that the D was the problem for many, many years, and now they can't. If I'm reading that right, again, he didn't play MVP, but in the playoffs, you can't have one face terrible. For years, it was the D. You're right, Jeremy. For years, it was the D, and now it's not. And that's kind of a sad twist of fate there, isn't it? That you finally have this defense, and then all of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers can't capitalize on that. Yeah, if you're a Packers fan and you're watching over the past decade and you're just waiting to have a defense like this, I'll tell you, when I saw the way that the Packers came out in their first 2 drives and the defense, I'll be straight honest with you. In my head, I'm thinking, this team's going to the Super Bowl. Like that's what I was like. I didn't have to see anything else, right? Now, it's a good thing we did, because everything else was like, no, they're not going to the Super Bowl. But
LOL, JK.
Yeah, like boom, here's the carpet being pulled right out from under you. But they had that defense. And you just expect that Aaron Rodgers in this offense is going to score more than 10 points.
Right.
You just expect that, and they did it. You're right. If the special teams was the difference on the scoreboard, and Aaron Rodgers and that offense was the difference in the game. Both can be true.
Best way I've explained it is the special teams lost it and Aaron Rodgers didn't win it.
Yeah.
And so Heidi makes a good point when it comes to the cap space. What about getting rid of Bakhtiari? He carries a $13 million salary. I mean, that clears up a decent bit. If he's always
saving, though, there's a lot of dead money in there. Yeah,
I'll be honest, I'm not sure.
This is probably best to limit all the specific cap questions because I haven't gotten into it, but I think he's got a lot of dead money.
Right. But if he's
That's
always
not a
hurt,
from what I've seen, that's not a very feasible option.
but if he's always hurt, is it worth keeping him? Is the question.
If it makes no difference on the minimal difference on the cap, then absolutely, and that's my understanding.
Yeah. Atomic. We're going to take a couple more questions here, but Atomic Hound asked, "Do you think Matt LaFleur was being truthful when he said the leadership of the franchise is united in wanting 12 back? He said to us the other day, we're all on the same page. There is no disagreement." Do you think he was telling the truth?
I don't know. That's a really good question. Because let's be real here. Not everything they say at that podium is the truth. That's just not. That's
right.
Even Maurice Drayton, early in the season, said the most transparent thing I've ever heard in that media room, which was the truth is in there, meaning his meeting room, not necessarily in here, right?
That's a good line.
Or that meeting room is the truth room, not necessarily this room. So you always have to take what they say with a grain of salt. I was surprised that Matt LaFleur was as blunt with his desire for Aaron Rodgers to come back as he was. I thought that he'd be more non-committal. He was very clear about it. So that makes me think that, at this point, he must want, Aaron Rodgers back. Now, as far as everyone being in the same agreement, he said the conversations he's been part of. So we don't know what conversations he hasn't been part of, right? And that's going to be a Brian Gutekunst thing more than anything. So we need to hear from Brian Gutekunst. I'll be most curious what the GM has to say. But I don't know. The best answer is we're going to have to let this thing play out to see how different what he said days after the season becomes down the road.
Right. Jeremy apologizes. He said his comment was cut off, but you did interpret it correctly. So
I thought so. I was looking at it like, I got you, Jeremy.
Right, exactly. There's actually several questions in here, so I'm not even going to pull up just one in particular because there's several questions in here in relation to Brady and why is Tom Brady able to do this. I actually had a long conversation with a fan the other night about this, and the conclusion we came to was that Brady is willing. Like I said, it was a long conversation, so I'm trying to figure out how to sum it up. Essentially, that Brady is willing to take coaching, I guess is the best way to say it, a little bit more, or that he, I don't want to say he's more of a team player because that's not it. That's saying that Aaron Rodgers is not. I guess more willing to take in from those around him is the best way to say it.
I want to make it way simpler than that. It's one word: clutch.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah. That's he can, as someone said, big players play big in big games.
I mean, it's all there on film.
Yeah.
You think Tom Brady's missing out on Lazard on that play?
Right.
Heck no.
Anybody.
You think Tom Brady's not going to get a touchdown to Aaron Jones on that play?
Right.
It's clutch.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes all the difference and not messing up as well. Like I said, we're going to take I think probably one more question here. We got a nice compliment from Atomic Hound. Thanks for the great work you both do in covering our favorite team.
Great name, Atomic Hound.
I know, right?
I'll compliment you right back.
Exactly. And then let's see, we're going to take one more here from DJ. Point is, Rodgers from game one had to win after Favre got that done. He's the best thrower ever, but he played bad defense, unmotivated. Okay. Yeah, sounds good. I like that one. And okay, here's a really good one. Let's end with this one from Michael. Do you agree? He said, I wanted more passion and fight out of Aaron on Saturday to scream and shout at guys to do this, but he was zoned out looking lost on the bench. Ryan, I haven't gotten a chance to go back and watch the TV broadcast yet, but my mom said the same thing, that she said that's what it looked like on TV. Do you think there's anything to that?
No. Michael, I think what you wanted is for him to make the plays he was supposed to make, right? And when that doesn't happen, I think that there's all these reasons why and trying to understand. The reality is he didn't make the plays he was supposed to make. And if he did, this team's playing this week.
Right.
So that's how I look at it. I think it's usually a lot simpler than that. I don't think his demeanor had anything to do with him making the plays or didn't make the plays. I think he just didn't make the plays. Why? He hasn't exhibited all that much postseason clutch gene in his career. Like he has that ball to Greg Jennings, right? Super Bowl 45. That's as clutch as it gets. Since then, I go back to that Dallas game, I go back to the Arizona Cardinals game, but there's been many, many times when it just hasn't been there. And it wasn't there Saturday night against the 49ers.
Mike makes a good point. He said, look at how much Giselle makes. Tom Brady doesn't need the money. So that is a very good point. Ryan, did you know she makes double what he makes? Or she's double his net worth?
No, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, insane. Absolutely insane. Guys, we're going to sign off for today. Continue on with our day. Stay warm out there. It is negative 15 degrees with the wind chill in Green Bay right now. I know that this will not be the last time we see you on a Facebook Live, but we probably will fade into the background here for a little bit over the next few days, sort of recalibrate and gear up for what promises to be another exciting golf season. In the meantime, thank you all for joining us every day, just about throughout the week during the regular season and through the playoffs. We really, really enjoyed having you all here with us and talking with everyone and getting to answer your questions. Ryan, thank you for doing this so much as well. I know it's always fun to get in here and talk to the fans.
Absolutely.
So, like I said, we will see you again. So just stay tuned to PackersNews.com for full coverage as the Packers wrap up their season and for info about the next time you'll see us here on the Facebook Live. Thanks so much, guys.